Ashlee. It's just you and me, and we are doing the wrap up of 2023 Lady Leader webinars. I first have to say, like, truly, and I know I say it every time, but I really am grateful, just getting to hear what's been helpful, what are the most watched ones, what are the things you guys like to hear about. It's really helpful. So I do really appreciate the texts and the messages and the feedback. Just because Ashlee and I were literally just texting about this, that we genuinely care so much about making sure you guys feel heard and making sure that the topics that are relevant to you, we're trying to cover as best we can. So thank you once again. Thank you for all the feedback. We did do, I believe, 11 webinars, one every month throughout 2023. And what I did is I kind of took everything and turned it into what are some of the really big topics so that people could potentially go back and access them. Because a lot of times people ask questions in DSN, things like that, and there's some really great resources that we have that we've done that they could utilize. So I think one of the first topics that I thought we could dive into that really became, I got lots of messages about this one, and that was, do I need an admin assistant? Or I think I may, but I'm really, really scared to spend the money on an admin assistant. So I thought, Ashlee, what were the top things, if you could just kind of quickly, because we're going to just bullet point through this because people can always go back to the webinar, but the top things that you see were concerns from doctors about getting an admin assistant, but why they really need them often.
Yeah. So what's funny is one is like it feels like it's a like bougie expense, or it's something like, well, only celebrities have personal assistants, or even admin assistants, but we kind of break them into three categories: personal admin, executive assistant. And it feels like such a luxury sometimes to have this person, and I see that as a concern quite often from the docs. And how do I present this to my team? And one of the biggest things I tell people is like, just explain, like, I know I'm the bottleneck here, the doctor. I know you guys are waiting on me to get stuff done. And this person is really just going to help move this along. It's going to help hold me accountable. It's going to help you be less frustrated because things are actually getting done. So that's a really big one. And then two, with regards to, I know that I need someone, but where do I even start? If you look up, I think if you're even inside of DSN, I have my what can I delegate list. You can even just look what can I delegate, and it's all across DSN. It's just a list of 2 pages of all the different types of things you can start to delegate. And I tell people too, just keep a list on your phone and just start writing down the things that you hate doing, that suck up your time, that you're not good at, because you can usually find someone to help with those things. I think those are the 2 biggest things. This feels like a very much of a luxury expense, and I don't even know what I would do with them, but I feel like I need them. And those are kind of the 2 that I hear.
Yeah. And I would say that's the biggest thing I hear is, well, I'll just save the money and do it myself. And I'm always like, but tell me, is there something that only you can do? If there's something only you can do that's more pressing, that would actually have big impact on your practice, then it really does behoove you, for the sake of your team, to actually hire that person out, because they could do the job potentially just as well. I have found now, often they do it better than I ever could. So, because I don't actually like any of that stuff either. But,
right.
I find that a lot of times I tell doctors, like, if we really go through the list of what do you really know you need to work on? What are the things that you just, you gotta get done, because it would truly be huge impact. Then let's work on those and delegate the rest of that. And I think, if you're looking for where do I find them, because I hear that a lot, where do I find them? I don't even have time to interview. I don't have time to train. Good news. Ashlee, that's a little bit of what you know about.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. And then also, so 2 things. One, inside of Dental Success Network, I created a course, because if you want to do this yourself and you have capacity, I created a course that tells you how to onboard the person, how to write your ad, how to screen this person. You 100% can absolutely do it yourself. If you are overwhelmed and you don't want to do it yourself, or you don't feel like you're great at hiring, I think I added it up and I've done like over 600 interviews. And not this year, but like total in the last couple of years since I've been doing this. And we've created a pretty good system on how to find the right person and then put them through training, especially with how to be the administrative or executive assistant to a dentist, because it's kind of a unique situation. And that's where my humble roots and humble beginnings stemmed from, with as the personal assistant to Dr. Mark Costas. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you need help, shoot me a DM and let's talk about how I might be able to help get it done for you.
Yeah. And I say all the time, I mean, you've hired three of mine and they're not all full time. Sometimes people are like, geez, woman, why do you need all these people? And I'm like, they're not all full time. Some of them range 7 hours a week and they do really specific, they answer emails. Some of them, they work with one specific entity that I have and they completely create everything around just that entity. But then the executive assistant, she's the one who really does work pretty close to part-time and she really does oversee kind of everything. So, the nice thing is if you work with Ashlee, she can help gauge kind of maybe what's a better fit, what you need, help you find, where to find them and what to do with them when you get them. They don't all have to be full time. I tell people,
Right.
A lot of people are looking for just those couple hours a week. So
totally, and can be hybrid. It can be totally virtual. They can be a complete blend of really, these positions can be tailored just for you. And the more, specific you can be and what you're looking for, the more likely you are to find that right fit. But even if you don't know what you're looking for, I can help walk you through that as well.
Yeah. So that was kind of one of our main topics that I did find that people had lots of questions around, which was great. So if you have more questions, please go ahead and access that webinar. It really does walk you through everything, or talk to Ashlee and just kind of get the ball rolling. So that might be a great goal for 2024. Another goal that a lot of doctors might have, and after listening to this webinar, I do think it helped a lot of doctors think through the process of dropping PPOs in their office. So for a lot of doctors, that's become a goal of theirs. They want to start dropping, working with insurances, especially in network, so much. And that was a great webinar that we did with Amy Hernandez. And I find that I tell people all the time, what I loved is we really were able to kind of walk through really specifically how to make it not so scary, how to use the numbers, how to pull data, how to easily figure out which ones are the best ones to drop. And even, do I send letters? Do I not send letters? How do I tell the patients? How do I train my team? How to tell patients? And often, we've said going out of network can be quite a bit easier than I think people sometimes think. So if you're looking, like I said, if that potentially is one of your goals in 2024, is less insurance dependent, dependence in your office, then I think that's a great webinar. And I truly think Amy Hernandez, she gave such really just fantastic tips, I think, for us too. So anything else there though, Ashlee, you can think of?
I just wanted to harp on again, like it didn't have to be, like burn the bridge, I'm done, like you cutting it all off at once. I think that was one of the biggest things that seems so scary and seems so overwhelming to everyone. And I just want to, touch on, definitely take a look at the webinar link. By the way, in the chat inside of Workplace, I am going to put a document that has links to all of our previous Lady Leaders webinars, so you can go back and reference all the ones that we're talking about.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So that was a really big topic. Another one that we did discuss, because we had so much continued hiring problems that were plaguing offices, I think, across the country, that one of the conversations we had was just, is starting a dental assisting school, right for my office? So, yes, that is something that I do and I can provide, is dental assisting, more or less in a box, a dental assistant course in a box. And my team is able to help get doctors credentialed in their state, if their state allows. There's a couple states that don't, but it helps doctors begin a dental assisting school in their own facility. It allows them to give certificates, x-ray certification, all of that, so that they can, yes, release them to the community, which is fantastic. But I'm going to be honest, over the last couple of years, I've used it solely for my own purpose, pretty much. And so I live up in the mountains.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. That's the best part of having a DA school, right? Is you're cherry picking.
Yep. And
you get to build your team.
It is. People have turned into some of my very best assistants. And, I've used the program in ways I never thought. I created what I call a dual enrollment program. So with this curriculum, and we put it all on Kajabi as a platform. The students can go through this and then simultaneously be having in-office work experience with us at a much lower rate than we would pay experienced, obviously, assistants.
Mhm.
So they're getting both that certification with the school and on-the-job training. So we called it dual enrollment, and it allowed us, when nobody was applying, it allowed us to actually bring people in. I comp part of the tuition for the students in exchange. So I pay for some of that tuition, and then they work on the job here for a lower wage, more or less, as they're kind of getting their certification and learning on the job. So I've been able to find very interesting ways to use the program. But yeah, once you're fully staffed, the great thing is you and I both know it's a really profitable way to use your office when you don't see patients. It gives your team some really cool things to own. They can teach a lot of all of the courses. And I have DAs now that went through that dual enrollment program who are now the ones who are teaching the next, DAs because they loved it so much. So it's kind
Right.
of allowed me to find some of those new up and coming rising superstars who are really passionate about the field, but I don't know if they would have made the jump into dental health without this. So
Totally.
if you want more information, you can of course direct message me too. But it's not easy getting everything through the state. But once it's done and through the state, once the licensure is done, it can be a really cool part to add to your practice if that's
Yeah.
something you're looking for. So anything else with that? Because you know it very well too, Ashlee.
I mean, yeah, that used to be part of my job was helping with the licensing of dentists across the country. And as you mentioned, it's can be challenging just dealing with the bureaucracy stuff. But man, it's just so cool and rewarding, I think, too, to be able to know, it was really cool to work in some of Dr. Costa's offices and know that, so and so had been in his very first class that he had in 2006 and, back in the day. And anyway,
Yep.
it's a really dynamic and excellent way to provide value to your community as well. A lot of times these types of programs aren't within the community as well. You're in a very rural area. There's not a lot of those types of courses near you, and so it provides a benefit to your office as well as your community, which I think is cool.
Yeah. It's a way to supplement, your team's income if they so choose, gives them something to own, great for the community. It is profitable for sure. You don't have to be totally hands-on. But like I said, when push came to shove, I definitely used it to find my own people, which I was thankful for. Um, so yeah, if you want more information about that, you can check out the webinar or of course message me as well. Another really webinar that I'm hoping people will go back and check out again is incorporating health-based dentistry. And we did that with Michelle Jorgensen. And I really thought that was an interesting webinar. She brought up so many cool topics about when you're ready to start just even dipping your toe in more of the true health-based, dental practices, ozonated water and using some really alternative products and things like that. Her webinar I thought was super interesting with how she walked through with offices, you know, having safer and healthier amalgam removal and things like that. So I don't know if you have anything else to add there, but I really enjoyed learning more about that because I have to admit that's not something that's in my wheelhouse, but I enjoyed quite a bit getting to hear how she did it and how she walks practices kind of stepwise through incorporating that. So if you're looking to be a differentiator in your community, that her information could help.
Yeah, and what I loved about that one, kind of like the PPO thing. One, it was a lot of new information for me, but two, it's really interesting to hear that when patients are starting to ask for more of these types of services, that you can be, like she said, these step-by-step ways. You don't have to commit to being like we're a fully, holistic, which Michelle doesn't even like that term. But or a fully
Oh, thanks.
this
Yeah.
type of dental office. It's the little things that you can do to provide even for the patients who are looking for these types of services, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing jumping into the deep end of the pool type situation, which in my mind, I don't know why I thought it was kind of like organic food versus, non-organic. Like it's one or the other, it's black or white, and it doesn't have to be
Right.
so black or white.
Not at all. And actually, I remember like the cost to get in was actually really, really
Yeah.
small. I couldn't believe it was a
Mhm.
couple $100 that you could actually start kind of dipping your toe in. So if you have more interest in that, and you're, like I said, you're looking for maybe something to incorporate in your office, this is something you're passionate about. Like I said, check that webinar out. She has really cool information in there for sure. So
And
the
if you're just looking for a mildly horrifying story of what ozonated water can clean out of a practice you acquired, she gave a really great story about that too, and it's lodged in my brain forever now.
uh-huh. I remember a lot of what she said. I was like, what have I been doing my whole life? Like,
Right, right, right. I was like, holy cow.
do I
Anyway,
need to?
but it's super interesting too. Super interesting.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, maybe I should stay ignorant. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so and then the next subject I will say, I think was one of the biggest, I think you said really overall ever in general. And that's we did 3 webinars with Rachel Wall all about hygiene. And I would say the ones I've done in the past too about hygiene have always been really popular, but not to toot all of our own horns. But I will say, like, if you're looking for free resources for your hygiene team to start ramping up in 2024, to really start building a hygiene team that has great verbiage, great tools, great resources. I think the 3 of us really did walk through so many options out there for building an incredibly productive and genuinely high impact hygiene team. Those are some of my very favorites because I love, love, love everybody who knows me. I love building dynamic, really great hygiene teams. And I just think Rachel brings such high value information. What do you think?
Well, I think the fact that we had 3 of these like says something, right? Like so many people, like you said, Summer, like we love, love, love to hear from you. So tell us the topics you want to hear about. Tell us the ones that made the most difference to you. Tell us about the ones you found the most value in, because we want to continue to provide you with this content as we move into 24. We're starting to plan our 2024, which is very exciting. But yeah, there was 3 webinars with Rachel Wall because we had so many people that were like, oh my gosh, we need more. Or we would start going down. There was just so much to explore and so many amazing gems. So be sure and check out those links to those webinars as well, because man, it's just so much incredible knowledge.
Well, and what I will say is, like, a lot of times I kept hearing doctors when I would do coaching calls talking about, I'm not ready to maybe fully commit to either bringing somebody out or flying my whole hygiene team, which some of these doctors
Mm-hmm.
have, 3, 4 hygienists, and it's
Sure.
costly. So they're not quite ready. And they don't even know if their hygienists are ready yet for that. And I told them, I'm like,
Yeah.
you're already on DSN. There is so many in the Lady Leader webinars over the last 3 years. I think there's so many hygiene gems of things that you could first listen to as a doctor and then listen to with your hygiene team, lunch and learns
Mm-hmm.
with it. And the cool thing is they're hearing it from other hygienists. So I find that hygienists have been really excited about the information too. And it's all included, with the DSN membership. So I'm like, boy, it's just right there at your fingertips. It's such a nice way to kind of ease them in and see if maybe exploring something bigger with Rachel Wall or Inspired Hygiene could be kind of a next step afterwards. So they're all
For
right
sure.
there. So um, and then lastly, I'm going to wrap it up because we actually did 2 webinars on, and I think I remembered and forgot this already, but we did 2 webinars. I was like, that's right, we did. On addressing burnout and the feelings of just getting overwhelmed throughout the year. And, I think this is one of those topics that I was really happy that we were able to talk through 2 different times, because we talked about it's super important for the doctors to really address when they're having these, concerns, these feelings, the anxiety that might be kind of sitting on their chest or wherever it may live, to really start to recognize it. Because here's the thing is, in the first webinar, we talked about it affects the team too. Yes, we affect the team, but how we're feeling, often the team is to some degree feeling too. And I was reading recently that the rate of healthcare worker burnout has actually gone up significantly this year. And it's almost like it was this trickle down cumulative effect that I think everybody's just getting a little bit tired, right? We've been short staffed, we had COVID, all the hygiene stuff, a lot of stuff on doctors' plates. And they're pushing themselves so darn hard. And a lot of our team members are pushing themselves so darn hard that there's been a lot of burnout. I've heard a lot of people who've had big team turnovers, which were out of the blue, turnovers of people that they never expected. So we addressed that in the first webinar, noticing it yourself, and then how do you talk to your team about it, which it feels like that little bit of a tricky spot, but there's ways to do it to where you don't have to be a psychologist for your team, but you can, because
that's a fine line.
Exactly, and I don't go there either. But there's ways to support them, recognize it, let them feel heard, but then, like I said, not necessarily take the burden on too. And so we talked through like not noticing it, putting our heads in the sand isn't an option either. Not for the people that we love and care for in our own homes, but for our team's sake too. So, we dove into that in the first one. And then our second one was just last month. And we were really fortunate to have truly a nationwide speaker, Lauren Zoller, who's a somatic therapist, she dove in even more to how entrepreneurs and doctors are pretty notorious for driving so incredibly hard, always reaching for more, always gunning for more, always more, that they often don't even sometimes notice it in themselves when they're getting some of these symptoms. They can't even necessarily identify them. And so I really loved that one. And I will say, I was really blessed and grateful. I just shared one with you today of the people who reached out and were like, I hadn't even thought of it like that. Even just a few of the things she said, it just made them say, I at least just had to stop and think through, oh, wait, I think this might be me. And, I always think to myself, just knowing
Oh, that was
sometimes.
me on the webinar. I was like, I thought it was just Lauren talking to me. I was like, oh, I think I found hey, it's me. I'm the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there were several people who were like, I didn't even know like how to categorize it or words to use or, and I said, even just hearing that, oh, wait, this is a really common thing, especially in hard driving doctors and entrepreneurs. And, I think the thing that she's definitely taught me too over the course that I've been with her is, actually taking the time to stop, be still, not driving so hard, taking the time to have a little bit of reprieve, kind of that off season, is really going to actually end up speeding up momentum long term when you can actually take care of some of the things that they may be surmounting that you don't even realize inside. And, we don't always notice how it's affecting other people, including, like I said, our families and teams. But I loved that she said, often that's what I find is really the ticket for entrepreneurs and doctors is that sense of being slow down, identify what's going on, deal with kind of what's going on, learn some tactics to work through it instead of just keep pushing it aside. And then you can honestly attain even bigger goals than you ever thought before because you're clearer headed. You're feeling better, you're feeling more aligned, you're feeling more kind of at that neutral level versus just redlining, as I like to say.
Yep. Ooh,
so
good one.
Yeah. I love to redline. So, and then it's usually once I get there that I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, what have I done?
I know I'm paying for it. So, so I think too, just knowing that sometimes that's one of those goals that it gets put on the back burner is truly genuinely taking care of mental health, taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're showing up the best for the people around us, actually addressing what might be truly causing some of that anxious feeling, the anxiety, a lot of times we don't even know it's there. We don't know even what it's called. But addressing that truly as a goal, can honestly help with everything else we're trying to accomplish. So I really appreciated us, taking the time, I think, to do those webinars, give people just a little peek into like, you're not alone. There's lots of us who have the same kind of feelings of being overwhelmed sometimes, or dare we say burnout, but all of it, we do tend to all have that in common. So anything else on that, Ash?
That was one of those ones that we got a lot of feedback on that was, I guess, like expected and unexpected. Like it was very much, there's more people dealing with that than are talking about it. And there was, that just made me feel wonderful that we were able to provide, some resources there. And going back to that point too, yes, burnout it's buzzword and we hear it all the time, and then we talk about how these things are like, oh, kind of fluffy and these are soft skills, and it feels like it's not as practical as by the numbers and getting production up and these types of things. But what I found really interesting about the webinar with Lauren is she was like, no, this is science. Like it's literally tied to your nervous system. Your nervous, it's like the finger bones connected to the hand bone, like it's all connected, this is connected to the shin bone. Anyway,
Yep.
I'm just gonna keep singing random songs on these webinars until we are done. But I just found it so fascinating because it is true. She's like, no, this is literally scientific. We're moving energy, throughout your nervous system that, it's just so fascinating. And anyway, yeah, I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, I did too. And I agree with you. Like, it was so lovely to hear other people say, like, yeah, I didn't even realize that other people struggled with this too. So I agree. There's so much of what she said that I'm like, I can't wait to hopefully get her back next year to dive more into it. Because what she might be able to go into more, she said, was the psychology of our patients too. Being able to recognize that their nervous systems are often keyed up with past traumas and things like that. And it feels a little bit fluffy too, but she was like, it is real for them. And there's really simplistic things we can do, say, ways we can actually help them to just, like you said, calm some of that energy down. So yeah, if you want more information, that's a really great one that we just did last month. So, but yes, I think just to wrap it up, I will say I'm genuinely so grateful for you, Ashlee, for every single month hanging in with me and all the silliness that you and I do behind the scenes with everything. I really genuinely, we take it very seriously, actually. So
we do. Well, I'm back at you, Summer. So grateful as well. I have a question for you though. Can I end? But can we wrap up with a question?
I hope, yes.
Can you tell me, what are you excited about in 2024? What's next for for you, and what you want to do here with our Lady Leaders podcast?
Yeah.
Webinar series,
webinar, whatever it ends up on, who knows, right? I think, like I said, the biggest thing that matters to me is, and it really came to me that I'm like, I don't talk to be heard. I definitely talk so that other people can be heard. I really love knowing, I like bringing to light the topics that matter to everybody. I like trying to actually bring tactical information to the questions that people have. Because I'm like, there's no sense in me talking like just to be heard. All I really care about is, do people feel heard? Do they feel like they're getting information that's actually valuable? So, for me, I think I'm excited always to be as helpful as possible. And I got a few things in the works, of course, because all I care about is trying to shorten people's learning curve, expedite a lot of the things that I've had to figure out because I had no other choice. So I've come up with some ways to kind of help people with some online learning and things like that I'm really excited to kind of work on and unveil in 2024. So what about you?
I mean, I think the same. This is just a privilege to get to learn too. We get to sit here and learn as we provide content and information for others. It's fantastic for me too. I enjoy it. I enjoy getting, like you said, getting to connect with you each month and learning from you as well. And I'm just grateful to be here.
Yeah, me too. I know, I'm excited for 2024. Like I said, go ahead and check out the links that Ashlee posts to all of the previous webinars to see if there's any information that we discussed that you might want to know more about. And then truly message us, or you're welcome to put anything that in that same feed. You can write any topics that you'd love to hear more about for 2024. So everybody have wonderful holiday seasons. Everybody stay safe. And again, thank you so much for all the feedback. Thank you so much for listening. We truly appreciate it. So, hey, well, welcome back everybody to the last Lady Leader webinar of 2024, which is hard to believe. I'm sure everybody's feeling the same way we were just saying before jumping on, Ashlee, which is like, where did the year go? And kind of this mad dash, mad sprint here to the end. So hopefully this little end of the year wrap up, my goal for it is, yes, we're going to take a quick peek back at what we talked about, but you know, I think that most offices right now, most doctors, they're going to have some time off here as the new year starts. And it's always a good time to reassess, what went really well in our years and really kind of look at potential opportunities. And I always say, whether it be to doctors, my leaders, like, what's the one thing? If you can only do one thing, what's the one thing that's going to make the biggest difference that potentially you haven't been working on, but if you do work on that one thing, you're going to make everything else either easier or potentially even negate having to do certain things because of working on it. And that really is the whole precipice of that book, The One Thing, which a lot of people have read, but it's actually a useful tool. So I tell people, as you're going into goal setting for 2025 with your offices, don't forget to add in your families or spouse, what you love to do outside of the offices, really establishing kind of some really healthy self-care type things, along with those goals for your office and things like that. And the reason I say all that is so much of what we did this year as far as webinars will be conducive to potentially helping people who are looking to set their goals for 2025. So, or potentially avoid pitfalls, I should say too.
Two things can be true.
Yeah, both can be true. So, where I want to start with is January. We had kind of that same feeling last year that, for a lot of offices, it might be time to just reset the standards. And that was just discussing, what does optimal care look like in your offices? So if part of your goals for 2025 are resetting that standards, that's a really good one. And how do we set them? We give examples of what they can look like and samples of how to create them according to what skill sets you have. So I think that's a great place to start if you're looking to reset the standards. Anything there, Ash, that you want to?
When we planned out the webinars for 2024, we started there for a reason. Like that, it was set such a foundation, and we went back to in 80% of the other webinars. So, if we're bringing this up to start because that's also how we started 2024. And if you don't have your, your optimal care standards in place, like such a great foundation to start, because like you just mentioned, it could clean up so many things if we have this foundation in place. So there was a reason we started with it in January. There's a reason we're starting this webinar now, and why we're recommending it might be a good place for you to start if you haven't done it yet.
Yes, absolutely. So if you haven't listened, all of these are archived. Everybody can go back and listen to all of these. And Ashlee, I'm sure we'll have information linked to it to see where to go, but start there if you're just not quite sure where to start. In February of this year, another topic that was really helpful for people was diving into the numbers that matter the most and numbers that offices are often missing. And Jake, you and myself, we dug into a ton of numbers in hygiene to look for, doctor's exams, what really the attrition number means, what to do with that attrition number, and just little numbers that you can tweak, of course, in overhead and things like that. But overall in the practice that can have huge impact. Some of them are really low hanging fruit too, just little tweaks that could help. But if you're thinking through that maybe you just need help with cleaning up a dashboard you may keep, or what numbers do you want to focus on in 2025, that might be a helpful webinar to give people ideas of numbers that can have a big impact. Anything else there, Ashlee?
No, I think that webinar did a really good job. And you're right. If you're inside of Dental Success Network, I'm going to link where you can find all of these on the replay. And if you are completely overwhelmed with where to start, because I know many dentists who just are like, I don't look at my numbers. I don't look at my P&Ls, I'll just outproduce it. Not to tell stories, but that may have been Dr. Summer Kassmel when I met her long ago.
Correct. And if you are that doctor who's even been in practice for several years and you're going, I don't know my numbers, That was also me.
Yep. But I mean, that's you have to start somewhere. And so I think this webinar is a really great place where you guys kind of dial help focus on some key things to get started with so you're not overwhelmed by it all. Like start with this 45-minute hour or yeah, 45-minute webinar to at least, start to chip away at that what can be a little bit overwhelming of a project.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always link resources in all of our webinars. So people who are wanting to, they love what they heard, but they just need a little more information. We always have resources in those webinars as well. And then in March, we started to discuss with Kelly Dove maximizing CEO time, really structuring what efficient CEO or admin time looks like. How do we start to master delegation? When do you delegate? How do you delegate? And then cultivating a practice culture that aligns with those goals that you set in that CEO time. And, anybody who hangs out long enough with me will know that I'll probably discuss like that was really a pinnacle kind of keystone thing for me to where I could escape the chair. Now, everybody knows I had to escape the chair, but ideally utilizing that time well prior to some sort of event forcing you out of the chair, using it correctly and well and efficiently can change everything about your practice. And it really just buys you your freedom over time, which seems strange. And I tell people that taking time to make time just feels wrong. It's kind of like you said, Cancun and Thanksgiving just seems weird, but it's kind of that
Exactly.
same feeling of like, I can't believe I'm dedicating time in the middle of my week to just do deep work when it feels like I should be producing. And so we dive
Totally.
in with Kelly, who, she has a really cool, successful niche practice in Missouri, and she's just made it such by utilizing her time and her CEO time so well. What else
Yep.
there, Ashlee, that I'm missing?
No, I think you covered it really well. It's just that key of like it seems like you said, like you shouldn't be setting aside that time. Or the other key too is are people who are trying to make CEO time and staying in the office. Like you have to kind of remove yourself. So you will force yourself to be in a different area to work on these things. Sometimes it's a coffee shop, sometimes it's at home, sometimes it's a library. It's sometimes away from the office or really setting those boundaries with your team if you do have to be in your office. Like this is what I have to work on. And trust me when I tell you, like this is, it's for the greater good.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and your team will feel the effects of the greater good when you're in there. And so we even talk about that in the office, out of the office, times of day to structure it. We even go into, is it stuff you should be doing at all? That's that delegation piece of using admin assistants, which Ashlee, as everybody knows, can help you find. But utilizing the people around you, well, just so that you're not filling your CEO time with low level tasks also. In April, we got super zealous, I guess, and we did two webinars in April. And the first one was, why am I repeating myself over and over and over? And how do I actually hold my team accountable and not begin to resent them? And that one I got lots of feedback on from people, whether it be teams, OMs, doctors, of just how much they needed to really sit down as a team and reevaluate a lot of that. Creating peer-to-peer accountability in an organization, it's hard, but you got to start somewhere with the right people and start to create some of that momentum. So we dove into that, and how it all starts with hiring, which I feel like is also a big thing that we discuss: standards, hiring standards, creating standards and sticking to them. So we dove into that in April. And then we also, kind of piggybacked on that with Sydney, how to utilize, hire, train, onboard, and create a really dynamic OM to oversee that process. When's the right time? Do you hire from within the organization, from outside the organization? When can both of those work? And we talked about, how do you grow them to start being able to make decisions for the office, to start buying your time freedom, doctors, as owners, how do you get that time freedom back? And it is appropriate delegation and peer-to-peer accountability and great OM. So in April, we dove into that pretty heavily. What else, Ashlee?
So one of my favorite takeaways that, like you said, those kind of piggybacked off of each other really well. And one of my favorite takeaways from that month was about creating an environment that allows for mistakes.
Mm.
That was just something that stood out to me very. uh,
Mm.
it just stood out to me, because it is like if people are too afraid to fail, that's when you're going to have to repeat yourself constantly, or you're not setting up that culture for success. And I literally outlined and like highlighted that from that month because I was like,
Mhm.
yes, you have to be able to create a culture for your team to make mistakes. And of course, you're not, the same mistakes over and over is one thing, but they have to be allowed to fail a little bit. Otherwise, they're never going to learn or gain confidence. So that was just a big takeaway from that month for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you stressed that because it is so true. And we do dive into, creating that culture that can be supportive and creative because they feel safe enough to do both. They feel the support, but they feel like they can be creative and try things without the fear of a failure, really being something difficult to come back from. And I've worked in those environments where you were on tippy toes all the time and you're just on eggshells because you were so scared. And I know I couldn't give my best work because I didn't feel supported, so I couldn't feel creative. And I think creating that in our office, our offices is just something that I have found gives that time freedom back in ways that you'll never even recognize if you don't create that sort of an, environment.
Totally.
So that was April. And then in June, because we kind of skipped May, went to June, we discussed, and it was kind of an interesting topic. It was, is it possible to have a remote team that still provides high customer service? And we definitely got into the nitty gritty of the pros and cons around creating positions that could be more remote. And that includes, people taking calls, that includes hygiene and treatment reactivation, that includes a lot of online services, online, billing services, and even a remote billing team. And now, to add to that, I just got off the phone with an AI company. And I think there's going to be huge advancements in dental offices. I don't know how it's not going to
Mhm.
happen. And I don't feel like I'm qualified to speak tons on that, but be on the lookout in 2025. There's some incredible dental AI companies coming out now that will allow our teams to take some of those really redundant, consistent black and white tasks and move them to something more like AI so that it can free them up for patient specific tasks. So I think that was a really fun one, just because I definitely dove into where things had gone well for me and where things had not gone well and how to set it up more appropriately.
Yeah, and you had to that it was kind of like as you left dentistry, right? It's kind of a similar situation. You had to figure out more of a virtual team because of your location, because of the pool of hiring. You were like, well, what are our options? And yeah, I love the topics that you share on how you're utilizing your virtual team to manage so many different things.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I always joke I have about as many people who work for us outside the organization walls as inside the organization
Yeah,
walls. It's pretty
totally.
funny. But they're still all team members for sure. So
Yep.
all right. And then in July, we discussed, and this is such a hot topic. I'm actually going to be discussing more about it in at the mastermind, next mastermind in January. But it's really, when to bring on an associate. How do I know if it's time? When is the office ready based on numbers, overhead, culture of the practice, capacity of the practice? So we dove into a lot of numbers based um, decision making type tools so that people could actually see in more of a black and white, format. Am I ready for an associate? Now, some of it was that soft skills of like, is your culture ready? Things like that, capacity wise, are you ready? But I think that was a good one for people who are debating, am I ready to bring on an associate? And I'm thinking that was the one we may have done with Mark, I think, when I
Yeah.
was in Las
Yep.
Vegas.
Yep. We had Mark on that one.
Yeah, so I think that was just a nice dive into that for sure. Anything else though there that you can think about?
I mean, that was another really great example of like one of the foundations being that optimal care standards again, right? Like, because as you're talking about where we see, and when I worked, directly in dental offices and directly in hiring for Mark's practices, that was, in the, again, early days before DSI. One of the pitfalls is bringing on an associate and not calibrating them, clinically, not calibrating everyone across the board as far as what gets diagnosed as what. And that just goes back to that January webinar of setting those optimal care standards and that was just why that was so important.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it can be such a daunting thing too for doctors
Mhm.
is Should I, shouldn't I? Is it going to compromise my standards?
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't live up to my standards? And so they
Mm-hmm.
get so petrified to do anything. So I think, you know, combining everything that you just said and really helping doctors feel okay to embrace the fear that they may be having and just combat it, think about it, give them numbers, and then go ahead and just make a decision, you know? And you really, the thing I've always loved about you is you're like, put the ad out, see what shows up. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, just start fishing. Like you can throw
Yep.
the fish back if you don't like the fish.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because I'm like, I couldn't agree more. I think
Yeah.
that's such a great point for sure.
Yeah.
In August, we started to dive into team bonuses with Addison and Jake. And, you know, I think what we did is we reviewed over all the thousands of offices we've all seen, bonuses that work, bonuses that we've seen maybe sometimes don't work as well, things to think about before setting them up, things we wish we would have thought about before we set them up. And even, you know, maybe what we used to do 5, 7 years ago, does it still work now? And so I think it's a really pragmatic approach because it's not saying don't do it or yes do it. It's saying here's all the things to think about before you do it. And is it going to be something that's sustainable that you can do for all, that we're not setting up for resentment on either side, that's simple, that your team can understand easily? And we
Mm-hmm.
walked through like what are some of the things that we've seen end up happening with offices when they don't set these up correctly. And I thought like I really loved what Addison and Jake had to contribute there too. Because I think it's all helpful for doctors before they decide to just quickly, because I am a, you know, jump and then build the parachute later kind of person. So I know these are all the things I wish I would have known before I ever did anything.
Right, right, right. This is one of those like learn from these examples, right? So we've gone through decades now of watching different bonus system, you know, different types of bonus systems in different ways. I think, you know, the two biggest things are use the webinar with Jake and the numbers that we had in February. Are you, you know, do you actually, is the bonus system the right step for you here? And then two, the make it simple. Like you can go back to the webinar and see those exact examples. But yeah, those are the two biggest takeaways for me. It's like, don't implement this unless you are financially truly ready and understand what that looks like, and make it simple. Those are, yeah, my two biggest things from those ones.
Yeah, I learned the hard way for sure on that one as well, because I made mine way overly complex and it got people frustrated. And I've done per position type bonuses, I've done team bonuses, I've done all sorts of things too. And yeah, if they're not simple, usually if I had a hard time gathering the information to deploy it, then the team really didn't know how they actually could hit it. In
Totally.
September, we dove into, and I love this one, a lot of team training resources. And we talked about FOA and how to utilize its resources, where to find different platforms to utilize within your office to help train people from scratch or people with very little dental experience, and some of the training protocols to use. And then when to actually send them potentially to Sydney's OM course. When are we ready to actually do that? So we dove into that because team training right now is kind of a tough thing. I know still for a lot of offices. Hiring is still tough in different parts, or they're having turnover because they just can't hire the right people. So we definitely dive more into how do we hire people with little or no experience? How do we put them through training programs? How do we help to onboard them into a culture that is supportive of that new person? That's something I have a huge heart for is, you know, we work so hard to get these new people to come into our offices, and we want to ensure whatever culture they're going to walk into is, gosh, you know, kind. And I always say maximum hospitality. They feel welcomed. They don't walk in and people say, are you here for an appointment? You know, and our front office says, are you here? You know, what are you here for? And the person saying, I'm starting my first day.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I hate when people don't come into an office and feel really like they're welcomed within that culture. And I've been on
Totally.
both sides. I've worked on dental teams and I've been the doctor and I've been the owner and I've been an associate. So I know what a difference it makes. So, we dive into team training and what that can look like. And I think even some of our previous webinars, we've really walked through from hiring all the way through 30, 60, 90-day onboarding. Over the last couple of years, we've had several webinars on just the importance of that. And we dove into kind of how there's so many resources out there to help with that.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. The biggest ones being Front Office Academy coaching, and then Dental Career Academy that you run as well. Those are some really great resources. And especially if you're DSN members, the Front Office Academy options. I'm biased because I help run that company, but
Mhm.
such an easy add-on to your DSN membership already. It's $49 a month. So, and it's at least a place to start when you find those super great culture fits who need to get up to speed on dental and yeah, and you're overwhelmed because you're trying to hire, like, you have at least a resource of where to start.
Well, and I always tell people too, like OM is that position that doctors always create almost this unicorn, like they're the panacea that fixes everything.
Mm.
Like, oh my gosh, like once I have an OM, the clouds will part and the world will be a totally new place. And I'm always like, well, it can be, but there's so many parameters around growing, delegating, training up an OM. So sometimes when you have that right person, I do think resources like being able to send them to those workshops or having them be able to really work with Sydney. I think Sydney, Caitlin, like I always tell doctors, you need support in how to bring them up to the level of expectation you're having in your mind. We
Totally.
sometimes can see it in our heads, but they can help translate that to those OMs, I think.
Yep, agreed.
And then in October, we did hygiene from the front lines, and hygiene from the front lines now is a real tough one, I find, because I think yeah, I think that a lot of people, I just got a couple texts within the last week of just hygiene related concerns and still having a hard time. And I brought in my own hygienist who they really discussed what they're seeing hygiene from the front lines. Really, what are some of the truths? What are some of maybe the embellishments? Really discussing like great hygienists, what are they looking for?
Mhm.
What do they want as far as support and resources? What are they struggling with when it comes to patient acceptance of care? Even things like fluoride. Um, and social media sometimes gives us a very different viewpoint. I'm not on social media. I do it on purpose because it's just better for me. But from what I hear, but from what I hear anyway, is that, I think that a lot of doctors are hearing just a lot of negativity still around it. And maybe sometimes what the truth is not exactly what you're hearing. And so these hygienists come in and really discuss what they're seeing, what they're hearing from their kind of groups of people, and what great hygienists are looking for in their offices and with support.
Yeah, that was truly, I know I told you like 55 times, that was truly, I think, my favorite webinar of the entire year.
Oh, good.
Um, it was A, just fascinating. B, it was just very enlightening. You have these incredible women who you have fostered though in this culture of communication. Like, hey, truly tell me, what are
Mhm.
you looking for? What are you hearing from your colleagues out there? What challenges do you face, during these things? And the fact A, that you have fostered that collaboration really speaks volumes, but then also yeah, they just had incredible feedback and insights on what it looks like from the hygienist side, instead of kind of like you said, the negativity and stuff that we often hear um, kind of associated with hygiene department and that type of thing, and kind of lots of stereotypes. And I loved that webinar. So again, if you're a Dental Success Network member, I just linked all of the lady leaders webinars under this webinar, so you'll be able to find it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I love that one.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I think they appreciated being able to have the chance because I
Mhm.
think they get bummed out by what
Sure.
everybody said. They'll be at different, conferences and things like that. And of course, they'll say there are those hygienists who are maybe a little more difficult or diva-esque, of course, but that's all positions. Their whole
Yes.
thing is like there's still really great hygienists out there who care about their patients and they want to be in an office that still has high impact, which goes back to them knowing the standards,
Mhm.
which is part of what we discuss as well. And then finally in November, just last month, we discussed, and I think this is something that, like I said, might have been part of the theme for 2024, and that was, what are you tolerating in your office? Um, how to change the climate in your office when it feels impossible. And, you know, I always feel so honored because I'm like, I've been sitting in those exact shoes where I've just faced something like that that felt so huge. Because how am I going to turn this around when I feel like all I want to do is go in, shut my door, come out, do the dental procedure, go back in, shut the door.
Totally.
um, I know what that feels like. And so the first step, we really discuss is, where have the standards been lowered that because usually there's some place that we're tolerating something, and it's tolerating sometimes even how the doctor's being treated, how they're being treated by the team. It's the standards that they know they put into place that everybody falls short on. Um, you know, how do we reset these things? How do we recalibrate and slowly start to change the culture and energy of the office? And what I will say is, it may be that the best thing you can do is listen to the first one and the last one, the January and the November. And from there,
Ooh,
almost decide, okay, where do I want to get started? Because it's all
yeah.
about standards. And it starts with standards with yourself, you know?
Yep.
And I think if we can't look in the mirror and recognize where we've let the standards go for ourselves, and that might be, I'll be honest, I tell doctors that might not be clinical. That might not even be what you're taking in revenue or growth or whatever. It might be looking in the mirror and moving back to a place of integrity with yourself. It might be moving back to integrity in regards to the person that you want to be, um, the the person you want to be in your family. And sometimes starting there will lead to what you're going to be doing in the office. Because I feel like who we are as people, it comes out in our work. It comes out in how we talk to people, how we treat people, how we allow people to treat us. And I think often, if we start there by looking in the mirror, getting really clear and giving ourselves the space and time to say, what have I been tolerating? You know, within myself, first and foremost, that it's not integrity. It's not whatever words you want to use in alignment with who I want to be. If I say to myself, who is the most ideal summer possible? And in 1 year, I want to be able to look in that mirror and say, yeah, I got closer to that person. The way she treats herself, the way she looks, the way she dresses, the way she talks to people, the way she carries herself, nothing to hide with nothing to prove. If I start there, now what are my goals going to be for the offices, for how I work out, for how I take care of myself, for time with my family? And then things will filter out from there. But it has to start with a standard with yourself. So maybe a good way to start 2025 is January and November, and decide what that's going to look like for you. And then we've got tons of resources, I think, to help support that for sure.
That just gave me like some chills. I think that like what a perfect way I feel
Oh,
like to kind of wrap that's exactly right. That one of Mark's required reading for his coaching program is extreme ownership, which is very hardcore for sure. But I mean, at the roots, it's essentially what you're saying, it's about that integrity and taking accountability over everything that's happening around you. And yes, that was beautifully said.
oh, well, thank you. Well, thank you. The only thing I always add to that too is people just can have some sense of self compassion too for why they got to where they
Sure,
were. Because otherwise,
sure.
I'm like, we have to have compassion with ourselves so we can have compassion with other people. So I always say, I'm like, I'm all for the ownership piece, but with compassion to the point where it can actually move you to change. Because
Yeah,
nobody feels likes to feel like they're under that shame spiral I
sure.
go. So I'm always like combining that sense of integrity, accountability with a sense of, gosh, I know why I did what I did last year, that maybe you know what I mean? So I think it's
Yeah,
being able to have all of that. And that's where I'm like, if we can combine that, just reset, but then figure out how you are going to hold yourself accountable for it.
yeah.
How are you going to do it? And I know for me, sometimes it was like, what can I truly do to feel good about it? And it might not be running a marathon for summer, Kassmel, but it
That's
is going to
okay.
be an elliptical this many times a week, and I can do that. So,
Fair
I
enough.
think I think being able to do that, because that's the thing is always at the end, I'm like, it's going to be us standing in front of us or us with our families. So we want to always start there, I think, is having that integrity with ourselves first.
I love it. I love
So
it.
awesome, guys. Well, this was a nice short one, but hopefully it gave you a quick wrap up so that you can go back, you can find the ones that are going to make the impact for you. And really, the goal being always, always, we just want to be a resource. We want to be a resource to everybody in DSN so that they feel like they have just some directives as to, with whatever challenges they're facing, they have some sort of directives or resources to help support them in that. But yes, anything else before we wrap up?
I don't have anything on my end. I'm always just so grateful. I can't believe another year has gone by of webinars with you. I'm excited for 2025 to keep doing this. And yeah, thank you for all you do for the dental world, Dr. Kassmel.
Absolutely. Well, and one thing I will say is if you feel like there's certain topics that haven't been covered or you want something more in depth, I love it when I receive texts or emails or direct messages. Honestly, texts and emails work the best just because I check those things a little bit, quicker. So I would definitely say, if you have things you want to dive into, it's really helpful because we're really just doing this for everybody
Totally.
if it's helpful. So please let us know. And yes, Ashley, thank you for always being willing to roll with whatever I roll out. And I just
Anytime.
love your point of view. Like you've got such a great point of view that I enjoy so much having your perspective coming into all of them. It's been really helpful. So I'm looking forward to it too next year. And until then, everybody have such a wonderful holiday. I hope everybody gets the time they need to just have some silence and good reflective time and they can think through what's going to really matter for them in 2025.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great holiday, everyone. Bye.
Bye.